Took a deal, sign another deal, post up in the hills on the real, headed for a mill, travel with me still, getting kills, all this pop appeal, got these pop stars try popping in, and they getting pop for real, I ain't tryna build, I was tryna lead a mill, getting to it, before I hopped up off the block, I was still going through it, friends doing pills, and came faster than it should've, I was Buddy Hill, shooting at a pace soon as I pull up, dropping buckets, hey, yeah, like it's nothing. In the kitchen chopping onions, yeah. Tears falling down, underdog is finally overcoming, cause I'm dropping buckets, hey, yeah. Like it's nothing, hey. Earn my respect and burn a budget, hey. Tears falling down, underdog is finally overcoming, baby, yeah, I'm dropping buckets. Drop some cash for me, don't worry about my past for me, I'm driving with no gasoline, this life I live's a fantasy. Yeah, I do this for my dogs, all my day ones and my family, my life gon' live through them if I end up in any tragedies. I hope y'all understand this shit got bigger cause it had to be. I always knew I had it, but just not at this capacity. I recognize the gravity, closer to the summit, stacking chips and counting nuggets. I've been stunting, baby, cause I'm dropping buckets, hey. Yeah, like it's nothing, ayy. In the kitchen chopping onions, ayy. Tears falling down, underdog is finally overcoming, cause I'm dropping buckets, ayy. Yeah, like it's nothing, ayy. Earn my respect and burn a budget, ayy. Tears falling down, underdog is finally overcoming, baby, cause I'm dropping buckets. Earn my respect and burn a budget. Tears falling down, underdog is finally overcoming, baby, cause I'm dropping buckets.
Ringside seats doing ethnic cleansing.
Good evening. Salute to everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Standing on Business podcast. I am your host, Boss Man, and it's a joy to be here. Another week. So put a one in the chat if you can hear me clearly. I've done my test and I can hear myself pretty clearly, but I want to make sure you all can hear me loud and clear because I'm going to give you another belly full of law and order tonight. Oh my goodness, it's going to be jovial and effervescent tonight. Yes, indeed. So it's good to see everybody. And as you can see, I am freshly cut and with a smile on my goddamn face. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And I got my ones already. Indeed. So welcome to the Foxhole, everybody. It's good to see you. And it's good to see some new faces today on the BMU network and on my side as well, on the Objectivist podcast side. So thank you guys very much. I really, really appreciate it. Appreciate the support as well. So let's see who's in the building tonight. All right. So, hey, Stevie, my Stevie, appreciate you. Salute to you. Thank you for being here. All right. Bubs the God, appreciate you. Good to see you, sir, as per usual. CJ Wilkins, my devil squid in service. Appreciate you. Thank you for being here. All right. ESS Munchie, good to see you. All right. Appreciate you. All right. Let's see. And Kenneth Tukes, good to see you, sir. All right. Salute to you. Thank you for being here. All right. A new face. So hopefully you enjoy the content. All right. Let's see. All right. I hope to see you again next time. All right. Hey, tit for tat. Good to see you. Salute to you. All right. And who else? And that is it for the moment. So with that in mind, I appreciate the ones. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I need a little help. I'm alone in the studio, so every so often I have moments of technical difficulties, but it seems to be working out at least one, two, maybe three times in a row. So I am on a goddamn on roll. So with that in mind, before we get started, let's go ahead and get some housekeeping things in order. Hey, support the fam. All right, you can support the family by sending a Cash App to the Black Men Unfiltered Network or a YouTube super chat directly there. All right, support the fam. All right, we do good things here. All right, and you can also support me directly as well. I do have a Cash App as well with the boss man, the objectivist there, and or if not, and you don't have it to give, that's perfectly fine. The best way to support me, honestly, as I am just now getting on the YouTube market here, is just going over to my channel and like, subscribe, and share. Okay, be patient with me. I'm growing. I'm getting there. It's a work in progress. All right, between husbandry, fathertry, and just everything, I'm working on it. All right, so bear with me. Go over there and come on back to the Foxhole and grab yourself something cold to drink and have a seat and enjoy this belly full of law I'm about to throw at you. Okay. All right. So with that in mind, all right. So last week, all right, this is part 4. More specifically, all right, part 4, the embattled judiciary fights to prevent a constitutional crisis. All right. Now, in this part and in this series, I have been trying my best to express where we are as a country, constitutionally, legally, and trying to explain basically where we are relative to this government from the 3 branches and what the hell is going on for the most part, and basically shouting, at the top of the mountain, like some shit's happening from a liberal perspective, but to my name, truly, okay, the objectivist, trying to shoot down the middle and offer a perspective to try to get people to understand that, yes, though we voted from a blue and red perspective, let's come to the center, all right, and let's learn from our actions here in preparation to what is obviously coming, which will obviously be the midterms and eventually the presidency again. And then let's learn from the mistakes and let's do better, right? Let's not vote for spoiled milk again, right? But what seems to happen here, hey, Salute to you. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. But what seems to happen here is exactly what I feared. Okay. Now, mind you, I'm bringing in, if you go back and watch the series, I'm bringing in, documents, court documents. I'm showing United States Code. I'm showing Senate bills, House resolutions, the works. Some stuff I'm going to be showing you tonight. And last week, I showed an example. We did a little bit of an exercise of what I like to call the pinnacle of disinformation, which is a pure example of something nefarious, where you've nefariously used misinformation purposely to mislead with information that you know is incorrect, and you use it nefariously to mislead people. That is what disinformation is. Now, here's the problem. The very thing that I told you guys would happen, I witnessed it. No shit, live. I was on TikTok. I was on a panel on TikTok this past weekend or so. And no shit, I'm on there, and let me set the scene. So if you've ever seen like political conversations or debates on TikTok, it's literally either one side, the host is usually either a Democrat or Republican or whatever, and there's usually a prompt on the host screen, and there's a panel, and is usually on the panel there's Democrats and Republican voting people or whatever, and they basically have an open forum of debate for the most part, right? Cool. And so I get on there, and they ask each person, your name. Well, obviously your name is on there, but your state and who you voted for. And so I'm on there, and and there's like maybe it's outnumbered. It's maybe about four Republicans and like 3 Democrats for the most part. And so before getting on there, I'm listening, and I'm hearing a lot of platitudes. I'm hearing a lot of kind of non sequitur type arguments for the most part, and not a heck of a whole lot of facts per se. The host and the moderator did read a portion of the Supreme Court 9-0 ruling. Okay. And so this new person gets on there, Republican, and I'm on there at this point, and this new person says that the Supreme Court ruling said that it was 9-0 in the favor of President Trump and the administration. And all of us are like, right? Right. And we asked the question, like, how do you figure? Like, how do you figure? And no shit, like I said last week, what was going to happen, this person said the exact thing I said was going to happen, which was because the president at the Oval Office said that it was, and of course, Stephen Miller, the Men in Black, alien on Men in Black, the skinny ones with the cigarettes, whatever. Yeah, that's Stephen Miller. And Stephen Miller said that it was the president, the 9-0 ruled in the president's favor. And Pam Bondi also. And so, because the president said it in the Oval Office, that was his proof that the Supreme Court ruling 9-0 was in the president's favor. And we were just flabbergasted. And I said to him, and I pulled up and I said, listen, I plugged in my my YouTube channel, and I said, this is why I do what I do. This is the reason. Because you have people who are supposed to be in the positions of power, entrusted with at least if you are going to spin it, spin it a little bit better. But don't spin it so bad that it becomes a lie. Right? But the interesting thing about disinformation is that when you are in a position of power and you purposely twist the information, those people know that low information type people are not going to pull a document such as this. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? I have it. Here it is, right here. There it is. I have it. Such as this, and read it for themselves. Let's see. Let's get to these comments. Sorry. It says it's unrecognizable. It is unrecognizable. That's how swift fascism has moved in this country. It is unrecognizable, but it was predicted. We told them that this was going to happen, but they didn't listen. That's what they, that's what they wanted, right? That's exactly what they wanted, right? That's
what I'm talking about. That's what America wants. Nice and calm.
That's what they wanted. Obviously. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Upside down world. It's so bad of an upside down world that essentially it is better to be lied to than to be told the truth. You know, I oftentimes wonder if ideation is better than objectivity, which is essentially the concept of being lied to than to be told the truth. Essentially. What else we got here? I don't know why, but Stephen Miller reminds me of a hobbit that is all and Pam Bondi with her bags under her eyes. She could use some Clinique. Like literally, sis, get some rest. You look tired. Anybody who works for President Trump is either going to lose their bar license and never get any sleep or lose their jobs for the most part. So that's fine. That's the job she wanted us. That's what she's going to do. I'm just surprised that she's been there that long. The first administration went through how many press secretaries? I'm just saying, and moving right along. And clock. There we go. All right. And now he's back. Absolutely. Let's see. Here we go. Next. Unfortunately, that false evidence appearing real is something else. Very well done. I like that. Giuliani. Yep. Absolutely. Facts. So very few people are actually going to take a moment to go through and read this. So after we read this to this guy, after the host read this part, he then chooses to continue his platitude because it was easier to just continue with what he was believing and hearing as opposed to accepting what was read. So then I have to ask the question, why? So I agree with everyone making their points of views in the comments. Absolutely, I appreciate it. The truth is there. What is clearly made is there. What I don't understand is if you can go and look up the information and you have the option while it's available to you to find out the truth for yourself, then I'm failing to understand why choose to believe what is told to you. You know, I was once told during the election season that Democrats, we were what? Low information voters. We were single issue voters by the conservative Republican side. And then all of a sudden, just to find out that the conservatives seem to have those same type of people. And I'm going to say this again, And this may rub some people the wrong way, but I none too much give a shit at this point. But I'm still not hearing much political conversation. And we have a Trump administration who, yes, recently signed a executive order to, sign an executive order to do a couple of good things. Nonetheless, okay, let's be fair. Restoring, sorry, let me show you. Excuse me. I dare not. See, I'm not one of those people. If you're new here, I'm not one of those people that just, I do take my time to be able to show you what it is that I'm seeing. Yeah. Okay. So this is the Federal Register. So restoring American seafood competitiveness. Okay. Restoring common sense in federal procurement. Okay. I'm interested in actually reading this one. Okay. Because this actually interests me a lot, actually. Restoring common sense in federal office space management. Now, that to me interests me too, because the federal footprint within DC is very, very large. DC or the DMV area is very, very large, and it to be fair, it is very bloated. Okay, so depending on what's in there, it makes some sense to kind of shrink it or concatenate it or what's what I'm looking for? You can use concatenate or truncate it to some degree. It does make sense. Okay. So depending on what you're doing here with this, all right. But if that is also in connection to firing a bunch of people, then EO, 14274 doesn't make a heck of a whole lot of sense. Okay. So we can find some things in here that seems that you might be able to come and say that may be some good elements to it. Sure. Perfectly fine. It might make some sense there. But at the same time, what is happening here is we have an infringement upon a very brutal and very crucial aspect of, hey, good evening, Mr. Bennett, salute to you. But at the same time, what we have is also an infringement upon something very, very crucial to all of us, especially Black people, which is due fucking process, people. We have a no shit constitutional crisis happening where the president of the United States is basically sticking a big middle finger to the Supreme Court, which is the crux of tonight's conversation. So we can look at all these good things he's doing, but we're saying F it to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has definitely given an order to do something. And that's where we get into the meat and potatoes of our topic tonight. Okay? So first, check this out.
Clarifying President.
I hate when that happens. Try again.
Morning, the White House is clarifying President Trump's claim that he did not sign the Alien Enemies Act proclamation, which his administration used to deport hundreds of migrants without due process. They were shackled, shaved, and put on planes and sent to a prison in El Salvador. The president made the comment Friday evening while talking to reporters on the South Lawn.
It doesn't sound like this judge, who the DOJ is arguing with today about the deportation flights. He wants to know why the proclamation was signed in the dark, his words, and why people were rushed onto planes.
Because we want to get criminals out of our country, number one, and I don't know when it was signed because I didn't sign it. Other people handled it, but Marco Rubio's done a great job.
One second. Just remove that for a second. This is the proclamation that apparently he didn't sign, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Oh, because I'm getting ready to go straight for receipts. So proclamation 10903. Now I'm going to scroll down, up, whoop, zoom in just for the people can see. What's that, ladies and gentlemen? What is that, ladies and gentlemen? Pause for effect, because that looks like a signature to me. Now, some would say that that is an auto pen signature, okay? And that's not a signature that is valid. So let's look at something really quick, because that's the arguments being used. We're going to let that play for a little bit. But let's talk about something. And let's talk about the Federal Register just for a brief moment. Now, oops. Okay. So the President of the United States manages and operates the executive branch of the government through executive orders. After the president signs an executive order, the White House sends it to the Office of Federal Register. He lies so much he could pass a lie detector. It's a damn signature to me. Absolutely. Scribble scratch. Yes, but it's a signature nonetheless. Now, now y'all heard that, right? So after a president signs an executive order, the White House sends it to the Office of the Federal Register. So essentially, the Federal Register would not post it on the Federal Register until it is signed. They don't post drafts, folks. They only post signed documents. And the reading continues. The OFR numbers each order consecutively as part of a series and publishes it in the Daily Register shortly after receipt. For a table of executive orders that are specific to federal agency rulemaking, see the ACUS website. This page contains documents that have been published in the Federal Register because the White House cannot deliver document of the Office of the Federal Register until after the president signs a document. There is always a delay of at least 1 day, typically of several days, between when the president signs a document and when it is published. Once received, OFR gives presidential documents priority processing, and documents will appear on public inspection the business day before publication. Did I miss something? So, with that in mind, now I know I said executive orders, but we can go to proclamations really quick. And you will see the same thing. After the president signs a proclamation, the White House sends it to the Office of Federal Registration or Register, or the OFR. The OFR numbers each proclamation consecutively as part of a series and publishes it in the Daily Federal Register shortly after receipt. It's the same thing. So essentially, oops, sorry, I didn't make it bigger so you can see it. It's the same. It's the same damn thing. So the point that I'm making here is that the Federal Register does not get drafts. It gets signed proclamations executive orders, etc. Okay, so Donnie boy, let's try that again.
Without due process, they were shackled, shaved, and put on planes and sent to a prison in El Salvador. The president made the comment Friday evening while talking to reporters on the South Lawn.
It doesn't sound like this judge, who the DOJ is arguing with today about the deportation flights. He wants to know why the proclamation was signed in the dark, his words, and why people were rushed onto planes.
Because we want to get criminals out of our country, number one, and I don't know when it was signed because I didn't sign it. Other people handled it. But Marco Rubio's done a great job, and he wanted them out, and we go along with that. We want to get criminals out of our country.
The White House released a statement on Saturday on Trump's comments, saying the president, quote, was obviously referring to the original Alien Enemies Act that was signed back in 1798. President Trump's signature is on the digital image of the proclamation that's posted online with the Federal Register. It's not.
He's talking about the damn document that was signed back in 17. Oh, I love the broadly educated.
Clear if he signed it or if the document was signed using AutoPen, a method the DOJ says is a legal way to sign official presidential documents. Trump has criticized President Biden for using AutoPen, but Trump himself has used it as well.
I love the broadly educated. They believe anything I say. There's my African American. Oh my God. Whew. And did y'all hear how he just basically threw Marco Rubio under the bus? And basically was just like, I don't know, I didn't sign it. So basically you have CBP's, DHS, the entire DOJ. You guys should really see the amount of litigation and the amount of lawsuits and habeas corpus lawsuits going. I mean, 200 and some odd people are already in El Salvador already under that proclamation already. You got SDNY, you got SD Texas, you got another SD Texas one, you have the District of Colorado, you have the one we're going to go over to, DDC, Texas again. And then this one here is an offshoot of it right here. But Abrego Garcia and Nome, that's the one that's been made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. You have Gil Rojas and Venegas, Southern District of Texas again. The habeas corpus, thanks, I appreciate it. But there's been so many of these, and it's going into class action, type situations, based off of that one proclamation. Just for the Tanner in chief, the Bronzer in chief, to come back and say, I didn't sign it. Oh man, y'all are fucked. And mind you, I'm not spinning any of this. I really am not spinning a damn thing. Okay. So if you guys think I'm being partisan here, I'm really not. I'm reading what is there, showing y'all this stuff. Like this man is literally out of his own mouth saying that he didn't sign it. This isn't the first time this man has said that he didn't sign the fucking document. And so what's happening is that the DOJ, which we're going to go over right now next, is that the DOJ is basically rebuffing Judge Zinnes in the District Court of Maryland right now, and they're getting ready to go into contempt situations right now for not doing what the Supreme Court ordered, which is to follow Judge Zinnes's orders. Y'all think this is a game? It's not. I want y'all to imagine just for us. Well, hold on. I'm gonna hold that thought just for a second. Just going to hold that thought. I want to bring up that scenario just a little bit later. But just so y'all understand really quick something, guess what's happening next really quick? Just check this out. Prominent conservatives called to dissolve the Supreme Court. I can't imagine why. Y'all want to dissolve the Supreme Court now? Oh, because you don't like that the Supreme Court is actually, I don't know, doing its fucking job. So first, y'all want to handicap the district courts' power to provide injunctions, nationwide injunctions, and then now what do we have? We have dissolved the Supreme Court. Y'all can't be serious. Can't be serious. Say it ain't so. Hey, I remember there was a gentleman somewhere in the atmosphere of this here network that I'm currently on who said that only conservative judges are able to be impartial. Are you watching? We're going to walk right on past that. Because the conservative judges are kicking y'all's ass because the shit that he's doing is unconstitutional. Oh, trust me, I have tea for your ass tonight. Don't worry. So let's get started. So here we go. Let's first get started with the breaking news. Yep, I heard him say it too. Well, that's your interpretation. I'm inclined to agree, but I mean, it depends on the subject. You know who you are, sir. You're more than welcome to come up here on the show. Okay? Got much love, got much respect for you. Okay? You know who you are. Come on up here, guy. Come on. Come on, sir. Let's have a conversation. When he and I do volley back and forth about politics, it does raise the numbers, guy. All right. It is a good time. All right. Shout out to that brother. All right. So now, where do I want to go next? I want to go to the Colorado one, or do I want to go to, yep. Let's do the breaking news one first. All right. So here we go. The thing that happened over the weekend that apparently the Supreme Court does move fast. Check it out.
It does mean what it says. And maybe they didn't like the fact that they were openly taunted by Donald Trump on Friday, along with probably Stephen Miller, when they posted a New York Times headline, except they redlined it in a taunting fashion to say that Armando Abrego Garcia was never coming back from El Salvador, that he was a member of MS-13. And that was the end of that. Well, not so fast, because in another lawsuit that we've been following right here on Legal AF, that was filed by the American Civil Liberties Union in the Northern District of Texas, that case has now made its way in rocket fashion in about 3 days' time to the United States Supreme Court, who in an emergency ruling 7-2 has at least administratively and temporarily stayed the removal and deportation of a group of people who were told in their deportation center near Blue Bonnet, Texas, that they were going to be boarded on a plane and removed under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 because they were Tren de Aragua gang members. They were given notice, no notice. It was in English, not in Spanish. They were given no time to file the writ of habeas corpus, which is exactly what the Supreme Court told the Trump administration was required. They may have vacated Judge Boasberg's decision in the District of Columbia, but they said that due process and notice is the heart of our democracy and constitutional republic, and these people deserve it. And it has to be effective notice. It can't be undermined because it's in English and not in Spanish, with no time for them to get a lawyer, for the lawyer to file a habeas corpus petition in court, which is the way the Supreme Court said this due process channel has to work. So Trump, even knowing of the Supreme Court decision, still just declared that they were Tren de Aragua and told them to get on the plane. Now, the judge that this was originally filed in front of was a Trump-appointed judge. I mean, he was originally appointed by Obama and didn't get confirmed. But Judge Hendricks, he believed the government hook, line, and sinker back on the 17th and 18th of April. He said, well, there's no indication and no evidence that the Trump administration is going to be loading these people off into the El Salvadoran jail. And I take them at their word that they're not, except 3 different immigration lawyers said on their affidavits, sworn affidavits, that that was not true, that each of their clients had been told they were about to get pushed onto a plane with no notice and no time for a writ of habeas corpus, which led the
Okay, really quick. So oftentimes when I do this, I want to show what he's talking about writ. Okay, so let me do a little bit of instructional, shall we? So here is what he's talking about writ. Application for writ of habeas corpus shall be written. Shall be in writing, signed and verified by the person for whose relief it is intended, or by someone acting in his behalf. It shall be it shall allege the facts concerning the applicant's commitment or detention, the name of the person who has custody over him, and by virtue of what claim or authority, if known. It may be amended or supplemented as provided in the rules of procedure applicable to civil actions. If addressed to the Supreme Court, a justice thereof, or a circuit judge, it shall state the reasons for not making application to the district court of the district in which the applicant is held. That is 28 USC subsection 2242. Now, this is regarding the application process for yes, judiciary procedures, but part 28. Yeah, okay. So that's just for writs in general, and that's the application process for such thing. Okay, so that is what they are talking about when they're talking about writ of habeas corpus. So, in case you are wondering, and that applies to everybody. It didn't say for particular people. It didn't say for white people, black people, Americans, yada 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 yada. Doesn't matter. The Supreme Court can only interpret the law. They can't enforce, and they can enforce it. Trump bypassed the law. He did bypass the law. I agree. So that's what they're talking about when they mention the application for writ of habeas. All right. So now, as you know, let's proceed.
The American Civil Liberties Union should then file at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, a notoriously right-wing appellate court. And the Fifth Circuit took one look at this and said, well, I don't really see any imminent harm. So no, I'm not going to block. The Fifth Circuit said, we're not going to block the removal to El Salvador, even though these guys didn't get proper notice or have time to file a writ of habeas corpus petition. That's what we've been following is on Legal AF. All of these new writs that have been followed.
And y'all saw it. It says application for writ of habeas shall be in writing. That isn't can, probably, could, maybe, shall. Goddamn. Right? Y'all saw that. I saw it. Okay.
Filed in Colorado, in New York, in Texas, in different parts of Texas. And while there was a temporary injunction in a block down in the southern part of Texas, it didn't cover anybody who was upheld in the northern part of Texas. And that brought us to this case. So the American Civil Liberties Union, which is leading the charge here successfully, they were scrambling and they're running out of time. They lost with Judge Hendricks. They lost with the Fifth Circuit. This is like a real spellbinder, right? So they had to file an emergency application just on the 18th, just on the 18th with the United States Supreme Court. In their original Fifth Circuit brief and repeated in the Supreme Court, they said, removal without sufficient notice and time to seek habeas relief is in clear violation of the Supreme Court's decision on the Alien Enemies Act from April 7th in JGG versus Trump, the Boasberg case. They said, starting yesterday evening, proposed class members have been given notices designating them as alien enemies, and they're being told that they will be imminently removed under the AEA as soon as this afternoon. The Department of Homeland Security has now publicly announced that AEA removals are imminent. This is after they got out from under it with Judge Hendricks, who got played by the Department of Justice and Homeland Security, no doubt. And here's what they had to say in their filing. Plaintiffs respectfully request an immediate order barring any removals of proposed class members. Without this court's intervention, dozens or hundreds of proposed class members may be removed to a possible life sentence in El Salvador with no real opportunity to contest their designation or removal, which is exactly what the Supreme Court said that the Trump administration could not do. They also mentioned that there was another judge, Judge Rodriguez, down in the southern part of the state that did issue a district-wide temporary restraining order for all deportation centers that are covered in the southern part of Texas, Southern District, but this doesn't apply to the northern part of Texas. And we know Texas is a huge state, which led us to an immediate filing, which got the attention of the United States Supreme Court. Now, the first stop on that train when you file an emergency application coming out of Texas is Sam Alito. We know Alito is against everything that has to do with our constitutional republic and our rule of law, and he's going to bend over backwards for Donald Trump. And so he referred it to the full 9, however, and apparently 7 out of the 9, that would include Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts, sided with the 3 moderates on the bench, and they have put a stop, at least for now, to the deportation. I am sure, and we're going to put it up now, I am sure it did not help their cause for the Trump administration to have taunted the United States Supreme Court yesterday when they were trying to make fun of Van Hollen, the senator from Maryland, who successfully, after 2 days, finally got to see Abrego Garcia in a jail. Apparently, he's been relocated to another jail, marginally better than the Supermax that he was in. Of course, it was so bad and their evidence is so poor against him that Bukele, the dictator president, had to post a photo, we'll put that up next, where they superimposed or put in fake margarita glasses as if they were partying at some resort in El Salvador. I mean, you're doing bad things when you have to do that. So that didn't help their cause. Emergency application comes in, judges are...
One of the things I mentioned was that, and one of the things I mentioned is that the Supreme Court loves being supreme. It loves its power. And yes, the Supreme Court is largely conservative. And yes, the Supreme Court did give a slight nod to the president when it gave it a slight immunity. Some people say it gave it, it gave the president or the office of the president, complete and full immunity, but no, it didn't. It said that you have immunity, but only the actions that are deemed or dubbed to be under the auspices of presidential actions are deemed immune. And then it's up to Judge Chutkan in DC to determine your actions, what actions are deemed or dubbed presidential. And only those are immune. See there? So the Supreme Court left room for it to be able to do something. Essentially, it left room for the law to still work. So it didn't give the president full immunity. Okay. So with that in mind, it doesn't like the concept that it can be rebuffed. It doesn't like the concept that it can be repudiated in any kind of way. So in this case, here, I think I mentioned this before, that the Supreme Court does not like the fact that it gave a soft little touch like, hey, Donnie, don't do that, Donnie. Don't do that. And it said it in a nice way. And then he just basically yeah, it's my Supreme Court. It's my Supreme Court. All right. I'm immune. I can do everything I want to do because I'm the Donnie boy. Right? I'm deafblind done. I say whatever goes, I go. That type of shit, right? And then all of a sudden, it comes back, and then they're like, okay, you know what? We're going to have to do something else because now you're playing with us. We got the legislator trying to come in and basically, truncate our powers. You got you coming in here and basically saying, what we say don't matter, or what we say doesn't matter, and we can't have that. And now we're in a constitutional no shit crisis at this point. Because if the three branches are not respected or don't show deference to one another and show respect to one another, then what do we actually have then? Come on, conservatives. Where are you? What do we have then? Y'all voted for this shit.
Waiting. They can't wait to start their summer vacation, by the way, and the court is almost over. But they issued this order, and let me read it to you from now. Saturday, April 19, 2025, and it came out late Eastern time, Saturday night. There is before the court an application on behalf of a putative class of detainees seeking an injunction against their removal under the Alien Enemies Act. The matter is currently pending before the Fifth Circuit, which refused to issue the stay. Upon action by the Fifth Circuit, the Solicitor General, that's John Sauer, Donald Trump's old appellate lawyer, is invited to file a response to the application before this court as soon as possible. So here's the procedure. American Civil Liberties Union files an emergency application with the court. It's in order to give time for the brief of the government through the Solicitor General to be filed. They're holding the ring with an administrative stay. There's only 2 dissents to that. This is not a permanent stay. This is not even a temporary stay. This is an administrative stay. Could last days. Let's assume the Trump administration files their opposition sometime over the weekend, if not on Monday. The court will then have the 2 briefs, and sometime next week, they're going to make a decision on an emergency application up or down about these men. In the meantime, from now until that decision is ultimately made, they have to not be deported and removed.
Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to read to you that decision, or that 1 a.m. Saturday night or Saturday morning decision, or ruling rather, or order. Here we go. It's very simple. Not much to it. So, very simple. There is before the court an application on behalf of a punitive class of detainees seeking an injunction against their removal under the Alien Enemies Act. The matter is currently pending before the Fifth Circuit. Upon action by the Fifth Circuit, the Solicitor General is invited to file a response to the application before the court as soon as possible. The government is directed not to remove any member of the punitive class of detainees from the United States until further order of this court. See 28 USC 1651 Alpha. So Donnie Boy, don't do it. Now, the reason why this came out so bad and so fast and so swift is because, see, this here is to Alito, okay? Now, the reason why all of this was happening is because of this right here. Now, I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to show you why this was so urgent, folks. All right? Check it out. Right here. Many individuals have already been loaded onto buses, presumably headed to the airport. That's the reason why. So meanwhile, while you have the conservative judge, who apparently to certain people, the conservative judge is the only one who's able to take this, who's able to rule impartially and take this information and able to do something about it. That conservative judge who received the same appeal said, I believe the lawyers when they say that, you know, they're not going to, you know, put anybody on buses and ship them out of the country before anybody can rule on anything, as if they didn't do that before in the JGG ruling, in the Boasberg case. Because the concept is get them out of here as fast as possible to the other country, and then once they're in the other country, there's something we can do. Hey, salute to you there, BMU. Wait, hold on. There's my African American. No. Sorry, had to do it. Oh, couldn't miss the opportunity. So that's the horrid nature of this, is that many individuals have already been loaded on the bus. Because of this ongoing and imminent risk of removal to a prison in El Salvador, applicants are simultaneously seeking relief through a renewed application for a temporary restraining order in the district court in the District of Columbia. Why is this thing going upward? Okay, Columbia, and an application for a stay of removal in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. All right. Now, however, after the district court's order and starting last night, counsel for applicants and the proposed class of individuals subject to removal under the AAA were informed that numerous Venezuelan nationals currently in the government's custody in the Northern District of Texas have received notices that they are subject to removal under the AAA, and further were informed by government officials that they may be removed from the United States as soon as this afternoon or tomorrow. So again, 24 hours. That's not enough time for proper habeas corpus. That's not enough time for that. Didn't this happen under Obama as well? Didn't it? According to court filings, no. Tell you what, you go and find documents to find out if it did or not, and let me know. That might explain why there were holding cells for people in order for them to receive proper and due petitions and proper and due hearings in order for them to either be released back into either back here or deported. I proffer that most were actually deported properly because nobody was suing Obama. But how about you do the work and get back to me? The government's action to date, including its lightning fast timeline, do not give members of the proposed class a realistic opportunity to contest their removal under the AEA. Oh, I guess Obama wasn't using the AEA. I guess Obama was using the INA. Did I save that one? INA definitions. Title 8, Aliens and Nationality. Immigration and Nationality Act. See, when you use the right, here's what happens. When you use the right law, you're able to get shit done. So if you are removing people under Title 8, then you might actually have a better time in the court system. So maybe he was using Title 8 instead of Title 50. Just saying, if you were wondering. Okay. All right. So the notice is some members of the proposed class have received are in English only and do not inform proposed class members of their right to contest the designation in federal court. That's a no-no. The government has, remember that writ what was it? 8 USC 2242, where it says the application for writ of habeas corpus shall be in writing, signed and verified by the person. Well, the person can't verify it if it's not in the right language. Come on, somebody. Come on, somebody. Come on. Come on, man. If you're gonna do some shady shit, I mean, come on. I mean, you gotta come on. Like, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. All right. The government has refused to give any information to undersigned counsel, so you didn't give it to their lawyers for the proposed class. And as far as the applicants and their counsel know, the government is not giving notice to proposed class members, immigration attorneys. Removal without sufficient notice and time to seek habeas relief is in clear violation of the court's decision of April 7, 2025. Well, the Supreme Court didn't have to rule on anything that Obama was doing. But the Supreme Court definitely had to rule on Trump's ignorant ass. So here we go. Obama didn't have to be told. Obama didn't have to be told that people need habeas. I guess that's why there was cages for people, because there were so many of them. I guess. Huh. As of this filing, the district court has not acted on emergency requests for a TRO applicants filed in light of yesterday's evening's events. Applicants therefore respectfully request an immediate order from this court barring any removals of proposed class members. Without this court's intervention, dozens or hundreds of proposed class members may be removed to a possible life sentence in El Salvador with no real opportunity to contest their designation or removal. See. Emergency relief is necessary not only to preserve the status quo and prevent a permanent and irreversible harm to applicants, but also to preserve the court's jurisdiction in light of government's position that it need not return individuals, even those mistakenly removed. Oops, that's a read. Now, accordingly, applicants respectfully request an emergency writ of mandamus or class-wide injunction pending appeal and a class-wide temporary administrative injunction. Significantly, the relief sought here does not, hey, conservatives, listen. Conservatives, listen. Because this part right here, pay attention, conservatives, because y'all love to say that the Dems want to just release people release people into society, onto the good old great American pie eating Americans. Watch. Significantly, the relief sought here does not seek to prohibit the government from prosecuting any individual who has committed a crime, nor does it seek release from immigration detention or prohibit the government from removing any individual who may lawfully be removed under the immigration laws. Oh, the INA? Okay, it asks only that this court preserve the status quo so that proposed class members will not be sent to a notorious prison in El Salvador before the American judicial system can afford them due process. God damn. Come on, somebody. If no one's here to give it to me, I'm going to give it to myself. Let it go. There we go. So to all you conservatives who seem to think, who listen to Fox News, Newsmax, or whatever the case may be, wherever uncouth, recalcitrant, debaucherous, disinformed, misinformed place you get your news that says that us who voted for Kamala wants people to be in this country who did things illegally, whatever the case may be. The court documents literally says, and these are the people, this is the lawyer for these people, who says that if these motherfuckers did something wrong, prove it. Charge them under the right statute. Maybe the reason why Obama was so successful is that he proved it. But you got idiots like this.
Determine, or how do your people in the field determine that somebody is a gang member?
Look, there's various methods. No, I've noticed in the media, a lot of them don't have criminal histories. Well, a lot of gang members don't have criminal.
All right. Y'all wasn't ready. All right, try it again.
So how do you determine, or how do your people in the field determine that somebody is a gang member?
Look, there's various methods. No, I've noticed in the media, a lot of them don't have criminal histories. Well, a lot of gang members don't have criminal histories.
Wait. That's why I call him the mushmouth monster. What did he say? Seriously, what did he say until the end when he said, you can make out the words criminal history? What are you saying, Tom Homan? This is a spokesperson for the president of the United States. This is about criminal history. What? All right, re-rack the clip and try to make it out. We're just going to keep going. Try. Wow. All right, replay.
They're not in any terrorist database, right? We only know the information what's in databases based on, for instance, most terrorists we arrest that are identified by the U.S. government are later identified through a Title III investigation or through an undercover operation. They're not in any terrorist screening database. We know that.
So they're not in any database. I want you guys to try and catch what he's saying. So they're not in any database. You don't have any evidence for them. Proceed.
Gang members. I started as a cop in 1984. Many gang members don't have a criminal history. So we have a kind of social.
So gang members these people don't have a criminal history.
Social media, we have to count on surveillance techniques. We have to count on sworn statements from other gang members. We have to count on, wiretaps and Title III. So everything involved with criminal investigations come into play. So just because someone hasn't been arrested and charged with a crime yet, doesn't mean they're a member of a gang.
So they haven't been. So they haven't been charged with a crime yet. What are we, part of the fucking minority report? Okay.
But how do you, what we've heard from lawyers representing some of these people is that they deny that they're members of this gang, or either, Tren de Aragua or MS-13. Do they get a chance to prove that before you take them out of the country and put them into a notorious prison in a country that they're not even from? Do they have any due process at all?
Look, due process. Where's Lake and Ronnie's due process? Where were all these young women that were killed and raped by members of TDA? Where was their due process?
Well, the people that did that should be prosecuted.
On the subway, where's her due process?
Well, sure.
The bottom line is that plane was full of people designated as terrorists. Number one. Number two, every Venezuelan migrant on that flight was a TDA member based on numerous criminal investigations, on intelligence reports, and a lot of work by ICE officers. Matter of fact, 2 days after that flight took off, I even had a discussion with the acting director of ICE, and he reiterated that every person, every Venezuelan on that plane was a known member of the TDA. So a lot of officers, a lot of criminal investigators, special agents who've done this for decades, looked at the intelligence information, the criminal investigation information, all the various social media and surveillance and government records and public records, and they were confident that they're all members of the TDA.
What's going on here? Is he hung over from Saturday night having a wild party time? He's not shaved. He just looks like dog shit. He can't talk. It's nightmare fuel here. This is someone who is a law enforcement or prior law enforcement officer who certainly knows about due process, certainly understands the justifiable constitutional restrictions on law enforcement, because in this country, as part of the litany of personal rights and liberties that are protected by the Constitution of the United States, of which are the presumption of innocence. And that's why it needs to be proven in a court of law, because we are presumed to not be criminals. It has to be proven to a court that we are before adverse action can take place on the part of government. It shouldn't be easy for the government to levy these types of actions against people who are here, whether they be citizens or not. It should not be easy. The burden of proof, and it's why it's a burden. The burden is on the government to prove it before taking action. And you do that in a court of law. They circumvented that. They just shoved them on a plane and made off with them. And it's all under the guise of this Alien Enemies Act from 1789, which has only been invoked 3 times. War of 1812, World War I, and disgracefully during World War II, when Japanese Americans were sent to internment camps by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Disgraceful, disgusting. And now Donald Trump's doing it to others. And who else is going to get, do they just ring up people and send them away? They don't have to prove that they're citizens or prove that they're not citizens. It's just, we say they're gang members, so they're gang members. And now we're learning that more than 50% are verified not gang members. People who worked in hair salons and people who were working construction, people who were not criminals. But they have to sell it as terrorism. They have to sell it as something it's not to justify it to the American people.
I want you to imagine for a second and just walk with me just for a moment. I'll try to be brief, but just understand that the same part of the Constitution that gives them the right for due process is the same part of the Constitution that gives you the protection of due process. That if the government charges you or accuses you of doing or being or committing or infracting upon something or penalizing you because you impinged upon a statute, that it gives the government the burden of proof to prove that you did something. Now, Black people. Oh, someone beat me to the punch. Look at that. Boom. Now, just imagine, because if they can do it to them, they can do it to you. Oh, wait. They have. Search and frisk anybody? Ring a bell? Now, we're the only ones who are named in the Constitution, who are named and listed as being less than a whole person. Damn. Even immigrants aren't even. Damn it. Even immigrants aren't even afforded that debauchery. But imagine you, Black man, Black woman, or any other minority, because it seems to be that he's only targeting Venezuelan people, which makes you wonder, how is the administration targeting these individuals? say, some type of system, maybe State Department system, maybe consular affairs type system, maybe CBP, maybe IRS, any of these type of systems, right? Just throwing some alphabets out there. And what if they shift their focus to another group of people? And let's say they shifted the focus to you. And what if your habeas corpus rights, habeas mandamus rights, are broken? Well, conservatives, you can't cry wolf because you allowed it and watched it and allowed it to happen and cheered for it to happen for the next person and didn't say a damn thing when that same constitutional right was violated for another person. Again, the Constitution says no person, all persons. But again,
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what America wants. Nice and calm.
That's what America wants, right? For things to look very monochromatic in this bitch, right? That's what y'all wanted. Oh, wait. Y'all think y'all are exempt, right? Because now we have Americans who we have green card holders, we have naturalized people who are being stopped at the borders. We have people who are citizens who are receiving emails saying, letters saying that it's time for you to leave the US. And the common thread between all of that is they have names that sound like, Hernandez type names. They have faces that don't look so pale as the wall behind me, you see. Sounds like something similar called Driving While Black type shit. Wow, I can't believe my skin tone people would actually go for that. Considering that we know exactly how that feels like. Because how else would you know that someone is part of a gang by simply looking at a tattoo? I mean, sure. Maybe if we're talking about Crips and Bloods, whatever the case may be. But wouldn't that be the exact same process of racial profiling? The same type of shit that we fought against? Oh, wait, that's right. They're second-class citizens. They're second-class people. Even though we don't know if they're citizens or not because they didn't have due fucking process. Unless you're willing to admit that they will never, ever be the same type of people as we are, even though the law says there's two types of ways to be a citizen. You can be born here or processed here. Now, there's the question that some people are refusing to address. Is that will an immigrant ever really be truly accepted here as a citizen? That's the question. Because remember, only a certain type of people deserve due process, right? And the reading continues. Now I'm going to go speed read here. Let's see. Man, it's one long sentence. I can't even find the beginning. Oh, here we go. In this court's order, granting the government stay application on the ground that challenges and designates challenges to designation for removal under the AAA should be filed through petitions for a habeas corpus and not through a civil action under Administrative Procedure Act, the court further ordered that AA detainees must receive notice after the date of this order that they are subject to removal under the act, and that such notice must be afforded within reasonable time and in such a manner as will allow them to actually seek habeas relief in the proper venue before such removal occurs. In the proper venue. Another way of saying in the proper district. What was happening is, and this is a perfect segue. Now, mind you, this is all submitted to Alito, Justice Alito. And then Justice Alito says, nah, I'm going to submit this to the entire court. And then he was pissed off that the entire court said 7-2, right? But what's happening is, because they gave Trump a bone in DC with Boasberg, saying that these things could be handled in a district, basically a district that they're choosing to some degree, right? What they're doing is they're shipping people from one place to Texas, a place called Blue Bonnet, which is a perfect segue to this.
That we were here talking about how it looked like the Trump administration was playing games with the Constitution, playing fast and loose with the due process rights of notice and opportunity to be heard that the Venezuelan migrants had under the Constitution before the Trump administration tried to deport them, stuff them onto planes and send them to a prison in El Salvador. And we reached that conclusion that the Trump administration was playing games with the Constitution, in part based on the reporting that there were inmates at a detention center in Texas, Venezuelan migrants pending deportation, that were marched onto buses and driven out to the Abilene airport while litigation was raging on Friday night into Saturday morning about the unconstitutionality of what the Trump administration was trying to do. And we learned those buses rolled right past the Abilene airport exit, turned around, and came all the way back to the detention facility, and they put those Venezuelan immigrants back into their cells at the Blue Bonnet detention facility. And it certainly smelled like the Trump administration was playing games, and they felt like maybe they were about to be caught red-handed, not giving these immigrants their due process rights of adequate notice and ample opportunity to be heard in court to make their case as to why they should not be deported. Well, now, friends, there have been some developments in a federal case out in Colorado on this precise issue. And there were actually a couple of rolling news reports that came out about what that federal judge in Colorado suspected and then what she ruled. So let's start with the first of the two articles, this from Reuters. Headline, Judge skeptical Trump's Venezuelan deportation notices comply with Supreme Court ruling. And that article begins, a U.S. judge expressed skepticism on Monday that the notice the Trump administration pledged to give Venezuelan migrants before deporting them under a wartime law complied with the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling that they be given a chance to challenge their removals in court. U.S. District Judge Charlotte Sweeney said during a court hearing in Denver that notices of looming deportations given to Venezuelan migrants held at the Blue Bonnet detention facility in Texas made no mention of habeas corpus, which refers to the right of detainees to challenge the legality of their detention. This quote from the judge, quote, you're acting as if these individuals, many of whom don't speak the language, would know there's something called habeas relief, said Judge Sweeney, an appointee of former Democratic President Joe Biden. Quote, I'm looking at the notice now. It gives no indication of any right to seek any type of relief. And friends, believe it or not, here is what Donald Trump's DOJ lawyers argued regarding how much notice these Venezuelan immigrants were entitled to before the Trump administration deported them. At the Denver hearing, Justice Department lawyer Michael Velchik said the government, the Trump administration, would give migrants notice that they were being targeted for removal under the law. Any migrant who then says they wish to challenge their removal would be given 24 hours to do so, Velchik said. Judge Sweeney said she would rule by Tuesday on whether to extend her order protecting 2 Venezuelan men in immigration custody in Colorado from being deported under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act. And friends, rule Judge Sweeney just did. And in substance, she told Trump's DOJ lawyers that, yeah, you can take your 24-hour notice recommendation and stick it in your briefcase.
All right, so here we go. Here is the ruling. Now, there are some good things in here. So, because the petitioners, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here, because this gets good. And when I say it gets good, I mean, I'm sitting in my bed and I am reading this and I am highlighting through this because this is some good tea. Okay. Now, okay. Because petitioners have met this burden, the court orders the petition that petitioners and members of the previous provisionally certified class shall not be transferred outside of a district of Colorado. So remember, I told you that Trump's people are basically taking people out of different districts and moving them to Texas in favorable districts, and then shipping them out to El Salvador. Sounds shisty, right? So this judge says no. The court orders the following regarding the notice respondents and the government must provide petitioners and the provisionally certified class of individuals they seek to represent. Respondents shall have 21-day notice. Now, to be fair, the Supreme Court, this is the Supreme Court's fault to some degree, because it didn't explicitly say how long adequate due process or notice is. Even the law doesn't necessarily say, the United States Code doesn't necessarily say what adequate notice actually is. Well, that is because for each type of charge or each type of process, due process requires different types of notice. But 24 hours is obviously not enough time. Obviously. They're just playing in people's face. Whatever. Anyway. Okay. So, pursuant to the act and proclamation, such notice must state the government and state the government. Okay, that's a typo there. Okay, so such notice must state the government intends to remove individuals pursuant to the act and proclamation. It must also provide notice of a right to seek judicial review and inform individuals they may consult an attorney regarding their detainment and the government's intent to remove them. Such notice must be written in a language the individual understands. A couple typos there that threw me off. Okay, here we go. So, gives a legal background. Okay. Now, in sum, individuals subject to detention and removal under the Act are entitled to judicial review as to questions of the Act's interpretation and constitutionality, and must receive notice that they are subject to removal under the Act. The notice must be afforded within a reasonable time and in such a manner as will allow them to actually seek habeas relief in the proper venue before such removal occurs. That is according to the JG per curiam, which is the 5-4 ruling by the Supreme Court. So anytime you see JGG, that refers to the Supreme Court ruling, the 5-4 ruling. Okay. Okay, in a different punitive class action challenging detainees removal under the act filed in the Northern District of Texas, following an application on behalf of the putative class seeking an injunction, the Supreme Court recently directed the government not to remove any member of the putative class of detainees from the United States until further order from the Supreme Court. That is the AARP. That is okay. So that right there is the 7-2 ruling that I read to you earlier tonight. So let's go to the factual background. Okay, so a couple of things here. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but DBU is a Venezuelan citizen who entered the United States through Texas in 2022 and fears returning to Venezuela. Okay, he has a single tattoo which bears his niece's name, and that is apparently all that makes him apparently part of this gang. Let's continue. On or about January 26, 2025, Immigration and Customs and ICE basically arrested DBU. At the time of his apprehension, DBU was attending a party. ICE and DEA characterized the party as a TDA party in public communications and accused DBU as being a TDA member. So he was at a TDA party. Okay. Because that's how the head of our government is essentially accusing people. Whew. Okay. Following DBU's arrest, ICE and DA agents interrogated him regarding his possible TDA membership. He denies and continues to deny his membership. DBU has not been criminally charged. DBU is currently detained at the ICE Denver contract detention facility. Okay, immigration proceeding and immigration judge. Okay, so in an April 17th immigration proceeding, an immigration judge indicated that ICE suggested that DBU has a gang affiliation. So there's just a suggestion that this man has an affiliation. So what we just read about one of the guys is that there's a suggestion he has a tattoo bearing his daughter's name and that he attended a gang party and he has no criminal record. Now I could see apprehending him if he's here illegally, but none of that is listed. So imagine, black man, if you attended Nuck Nuck's party and you have a tattoo and you have no records. I mean, just put yourself in that same situation. I mean, the president's already talking about sending Americans to Venezuela. I'm sorry, to El Salvador. That could be you. I'm just saying. This shit is wild. That's how they're basically, grabbing people, essentially. Okay. Here, this guy right here, they're saying that this guy is a TDA member, but Maduro killed his wife. Craziness. Okay. So despite lodging allegations to the contrary during immigration proceedings, ICE reviewed the facts in DBU's case and determined that he is not subject to the proclamation. Okay, now check this out. Now this is the part, the reason why I highlight this part red, because this is wild to me. So despite lodging allegations to the contrary during immigration proceedings, ICE reviewed the facts. So they reviewed the facts. In DBU's case, and determining that he is not subject to the proclamation. So when this file right here talks about the proclamation, they're talking about Proclamation 10903, which is the proclamation I showed you that Trump said he didn't sign, but he signed. That started all this shit. So when it says respondents is the government in this filing, okay? Petitioners are the two immigrants being trying to be shipped down to Texas to be deported, okay? So it's saying that the respondents are basically saying the government is basically saying to the court that DBU, who is one petitioner, determined that he is not subject to the proclamation, and DBU has not been issued a notice. So they're telling the court that he's not been issued a notice and he's not subject to the proclamation. Got it? Cool. ICE represents if it determines in the future that DBU is subject to the proclamation, he would be provided notice of such determination in a language he understands. In a language he understands. Got it? Okay. And attendant procedures will allow time and opportunity to file a habeas petition. Got it? Cool. As with DBU, ICE has reviewed the facts of RMM, that's the second petitioner, and determined that he is not subject to the proclamation. ICE represents if it determines in the future that RMM is subject to the proclamation, he would be provided notice of such determination in a language he understands, and attendant procedures will allow time and opportunity to file a habeas petition. Got it? Now keep that shit in mind. It's very important. Consistent with these representations, ICE states it has adopted processes for individuals detained under the Act for removal. These processes require that each individual be provided notice of the proceedings in a language that aliens understand. They allow time and opportunity to file a habeas petition. The government provides a notice and warrant of apprehension and removal under the Alien Enemies Act. Didn't they just say up here to the court that they were not under the AEA? And then what did they do? Provided a notice of AEA to individuals determined to be an alien enemy and who under the act are removable pursuant to it. And then did the exact never mind. The notice provides any statement you make now or while you are in custody may be used against you and you in any administrative or criminal proceeding. The notice clarifies that it is not a removal order under the Immigration and Nationality Act. Hey, BMU, that is the correct one to use if you're going to use it correctly, INA. And permits that if you desire to make a phone call, you will be permitted to do so. The notice contains a certificate of service under which an officer or agent must sign and represent the notice's recipient was served, and the notice was read to the person in a language he or she understands. The notice was written in English. The government has provided no other version of the notice written in any other language other than English. So they said one thing and did the exact opposite.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what America wants. Nice.
And so when y'all hear on Fox News and Newsmax and wherever you get your deplorable information from, keep in mind that the court documents actually tell you the truth. Reading is fucking fundamental, folks. And again, I'm not adding more to it. I'm just reading it for what the hell it says. And here, the judge is barring respondents from relocating them outside of the district pending this litigation. So what they're trying to do is tell the court one thing and then giving these people another thing. The judges are being told one thing. The plaintiffs are being told another thing. The lawyers are being completely left in the dark. Meanwhile, these people are being whisked away quickly as hell while litigation is basically just happening, while people are twirling their thumbs and arguing over documentation and so on and so forth and yada, yada, yada. That's what's currently happening. And as soon as the Supreme Court gets whiff of all this is happening at one time, that's when buses are being turned around in Texas like that. It gets better, folks. Respondents, this is the government, argued that because petitioners challenged their removal under the proclamation and they are not facing removal under the proclamation or act, that the court lacks jurisdiction over petitioners' habeas action. So here we go. Check this. Look at that. So the government says, now watch this doublespeak. I told y'all these people talk doublespeak. So because they're arguing in court that they're not being charged under the AEA officially, but they're actually being told, the petitioners are being told that they are being removed under the AEA and being forced to basically sign under the AEA. But in court, they're not being, but in the bar of the court, in the room of the court, they're not being charged under the AEA, right? So then whenever these people come in and file a petition or file a habeas petition under the AEA, the court's like, the idea is the court's like, the lawyers basically are saying, well, you don't have jurisdiction under the AEA because this case is not under the AEA. Do you see? Do you see the duplicitous bullshit, the insidiousness of this? So then the concept is that you challenge the jurisdiction of the district court. And then what you do is you push it up to the damn Supreme Court, essentially. And the concept is you push it up to the Supreme Court, you get it all the way up there for the most part. And then the idea is that you get the conservative court to basically rule in your favor. And then when they don't, that's when you want to disband and dismantle it. Meanwhile, you lie about what they did when they didn't rule in your favor. But challenge their removal under the proclamation, and they are not facing removal under the proclamation or act, that the court lacks jurisdiction over petitioners' habeas action. That's crazy work. Now, how does someone fight that? I mean, again, imagine, black man. Because white people ain't got to worry about this shit. Imagine, black man, and all you other minorities who voted for this idiot. Imagine being in court, chained up, because mind you, you can't fight this because all you received was that a warrant or some bullshit that says you were being taken away under an act that your lawyer didn't understand or didn't receive communication about. That's even if you were able to actually call your fucking lawyer. And then the government tells the judge that they don't have jurisdiction to be able to argue or to even litigate, or sorry, even judge or rule over the case in their district. And if it not be for judges who says, but taking respondents at their word from oral argument and certainly from the TRO record, there is no definite evidence ICE will conclude or has concluded petitioners do not fall under the proclamation ambit and are instead subject only to Title 8 immigration removal procedures. Basically saying, I don't believe y'all. Y'all are telling me one thing and doing another. You got motherfuckers in Texas who are in court waiving their birth certificate in court, proving that they are born here, irrespective to what language they speak, irrespective to how Spanish like they sound. And the government is telling the judge that you don't have jurisdiction to argue this. Meanwhile, the person who's born here is risk being deported because they're charged with being here illegally. But the motherfucker has a birth certificate and social security card. And the only thing that makes that person different from American Pie White sounding motherfucker is that they have a hyphenated name and their skin is not pale pink white. And you black asses voted for this shit. I'm telling you, we are next. Now, normally, I'm not the kind of person who points out color of skin. But when the government is so blatantly doing this shit, when the government is so blatantly doing this shit, and none of you are calling it out, none of you, you're too scared to do so. I have a problem with it. They're not just doing it to Venezuelans, they're also doing it to people who sound almost Russian-like too. They're doing it to anyone who crosses that border from vacations even. Y'all think this shit's a damn game. Where the Supreme Court has prohibited the government from removing members of a punitive class that a district found not to be at risk of imminent and irreparable harm based on the government's representations, the court must follow suit. This court is bound to follow the applicable precedent of the Supreme Court. The speculative harm argument echoes respondents' jurisdictional habeas argument and rings hollow for substantially similar reasons. Now, she says, at bottom, petitioners have shown a sufficient risk of being designated as TDA members and thus falling under the proclamation to, at this procedural stage, survive respondents' ripeness and standing challenges. The harms petitioners face have matured sufficiently to warrant judicial intervention. Surviving respondents' ripeness challenge. Noting the ripeness issue, however, focuses not on whether the plaintiff was in fact harmed. I hate when they do it like this. It makes it very hard to finish the actual sentence. Okay, so petitioners have shown there is a substantial risk that the harm of being subject to the proclamation will arise despite their current designation as individuals who do not fall under it, such that they have met their standing burden. So basically, she's going through and providing substantiation for why she is stating what she is stating. So at the end here, she basically grants the TRO. But there is some juiciness here as to what these people were doing. Here we go. Absent a TRO, petitioners face the risk of being deported, perhaps wrongfully deported, under the act and proclamation in violation of their constitutional rights. Again, how petitioners were currently classified does not eliminate this risk when that classification and the legal framework under which they may be removed can change at any time. And here, she even says the executive remains free to take TDA members off the streets and keep them in detention. So Republicans, listen up, Republicans. This is a Democrat judge even making a suggestion of what's a wink, wink, a better law to use. Check it out. The executive remains free to take TDA members off the streets and keep them in detention. The executive can also deport alleged members of TDA under the INA. Does that sound like Democrats wanting to just have open borders and keep illegals here and so on and so forth? What we're wanting is for laws to be followed. And yes, even for the people who were captured and released, that's even a law on the books for people to be caught, assessed, given a permit or status here, and released. That's a law that was bipartisanly voted in, codified, ratified into law back in the 60s. This shit's amazing to me. Most of the asylum laws, oh, I'm sorry, not the 60s, I'm sorry, in the 50s, the asylum laws was first created June 27, 1952. It was last amended in 1996. And the amendment touched, I'll have to go into Congress.gov and see exactly what it actually touched, or what it amended. It amazes me. And if there were problems with it, guess what? Y'all had both House and Senate and presidency multiple times since 1996, and y'all didn't do fuck all about it. Exquisite.
That's not exactly how she put it. Here's how she put it. Headline: Trump must give some Venezuelan migrants 21 days notice before deportations. Judge rules. And that article begins: a federal judge in Colorado directed President Donald Trump's administration on Tuesday to give Venezuelan migrants.
Oh, well, I already did that one already. So we're going to continue with this one.
don't like a 9-0 ruling against you and you're the Trump administration, just lie about what the ruling says. Just misquote it back to the trial judge who's administering the case. That's what the Trump administration.
Okay, so we're going back now to the Maryland trial. And what's pretty much happening now is that we're in contempt land because they playing in Judge Dennis's face. Let's go.
Is doing as they continue to defy Judge Zinnis's orders about Abrego Garcia and the case, more particularly her trying to get to the bottom of whether they're committing contempt by refusing to facilitate his release from an El Salvadoran prison. One of the El Salvadoran prisons, they're moving him around like a shell game. She's got the right, the Supreme Court says, to make sure that they are facilitating. The Trump administration refuses to give her those answers. She's assigned to the other side, the plaintiff's side, the duty, the right to go after the Trump administration and get answers. They need answers in discovery, in that process, in depositions, sworn statements under oath, Q&A style, in sworn written statements under oath, interrogatory style. And the Trump administration is not doing it, which led to a new filing in Judge Zinnis's courtroom, which is not going to make her happy. And it's probably going to lead to more sanctions against the Trump administration. But I can't believe that at the moment when they needed to recite accurately what the Supreme Court ruling against them was, they even got that wrong. 9-0 United States Supreme Court rules to support Judge Zinnis and says everything about her order requiring that the Trump administration use all efforts to facilitate the release from an El Salvadoran prison of Armando Abrego Garcia was right. They completely support her. She issues a supplemental order that says you have to report to me every day at 5 o'clock what you're doing about that. And since then, the Trump administration hasn't not complied with her order at all. They keep telling her to go pound sand and other more colorful words effectively, go legal AF yourself effectively, because they're just like, well, we'll tell you where he is. He's in this prison. No, we moved him to this prison, but we're not going to tell you what we're doing to facilitate, even though you've ordered us to do that. Even though the Supreme Court has ordered them to provide the judge with the steps they are taking, they're not doing it. They're claiming it's state secrets. What is the state secret about what you're doing diplomatically to bring him out? We know you're not doing anything. We saw Trump in his ridiculous scripted moment with the dictator of El Salvador, Bukele, in which they were like, this ridiculous horse and pony show. Oh, everybody, I'm not going to release him. I wouldn't smuggle a terrorist into the United States. I wouldn't ask him to do it. I mean, it's like ridiculous and silly. But here's the part of this hot take I wanted to bring out to you. They're lying about what the Supreme Court said. Here's what the Supreme Court said. Then I'll get to the letter that was just written, kind of a joint letter, but really from Armando Abrego Garcia's lawyers demanding and asking the court for a status conference, which she's going to grant this week, and then she's going to throw the book at the Trump administration. The Supreme Court ruling was only about a page and a half, 9-0 in favor of this judge. It said that, this is on page 2 of the order. Here he is. The order of Judge Zinnis properly requires the government to, quote, facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as if it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. Listen to this phrase. It's not that hard. It's only 6-7 words. Facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. 7 words. And the Trump administration gets it wrong. They said, here's how they're trying to change the language of words they don't like in order to say they don't need to respond to the discovery that's outstanding. Here's what they say. You heard those words. Here we go. In their response to written questions required by the judge, they said, defendants object, this is the government, to answering the first question that was provided to them, required by the judge, because it's based on a false premise that the United States can or has been ordered to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. Then they claim to quote the United States Supreme Court decision back to the judge. Parentheses, in the Abrego Garcia case, that defendants should, quote, take all available steps to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia to the United States. That's not what the Supreme Court justices said.
Yeah, could you imagine being a black lawyer and misquoted just to change the narrative of what the Supreme Court said? about your shit and got it wrong, imagine how that would have worked for you. You know, the power of privilege. Anyway, just saying.
They said are ordered. The government is ordered to facilitate Obrego Garcia's release from custody. Exactly the question that was being asked. Here you go. If you don't, you disobey, you are in contempt, you refuse to comply, and then when all else fails, just change the wording of the order you don't like. What the legal AF is actually going on here? So that is one problem. So when they're not changing the terminology of the actual Supreme Court decision as if federal Judge Zinnes or the other side wouldn't see it, they are then throwing up these ridiculous privileges that don't apply. State secret's privilege, but they don't do it right. They don't assert it properly. So they have.
Didn't I tell you? Didn't I show you guys last week, and maybe even the week before, that there's a couple of executive orders where they by the power vested in me, and then they cite a law that was repealed, or they cite a law that says there's like an emergency at the border, but the emergency at the statute that was used basically says that the purpose of the statute is basically to revoke any emergency at the targeted area between a certain period. Like, how they do certain things is not proper at all. And they have this is a whole ass president with a whole ass legal team. But I hire the best people. I know the best people. And no one knows anything more than me. I know more things than maybe the generals do. I know I'm the chosen one. Oh my God, we are so fucked.
The government hasn't given Abrego Garcia's lawyers any real documents other than public filings. They haven't given them any real answers and depositions. Those are the questions and answers under oath, like you're in a courtroom. They've started, and the judge told the other side in her last order, if the government screws around with you in discovery, come back to me immediately, and I will sanction them. And that's where we are right now. So here is the new letter that just went to the judge as a prelude to the conference that she's going to be holding this week to throw the book at the Trump administration. It starts with, this is from the lawyers for Abrego Garcia, which just incidentally, I've said this before in some other hot takes, Quinn Emanuel is representing Abrego Garcia along with the ACLU. They're also the outside ethics counsel for the Trump organization. You do the math. All right, here we go. We write on behalf of plaintiffs in the above captioned matter to request the court hold a conference to address the government's failure to comply with this court's order requiring the government to, among other things, produce documents and respond to plaintiffs' interrogatories. On the eve of the first court-ordered deposition concerning the government's failure to comply with this court's orders, because that's what we're all about. Are they in contempt or not? The government responded to plaintiff's discovery request by producing nothing of substance. Its document production consists entirely of public filings from the docket, copies of plaintiff's own discovery request and correspondence, and 2 non-substantive cover emails transmitting declarations that were already filed in this case. Its interrogatories, those are the questions and answers under oath, responses are similarly non-responsive. The discovery responses defendants served this afternoon establish that the government intends to prevent plaintiffs from developing the discovery ordered by this court to support their motion for contempt. And then they go through the reason how they're doing it. First, and this is the one about if you don't like what a Supreme Court ruling says, just change the words. the government artificially narrows the court's order to avoid complying with its obligations. For example, the government refuses to respond to interrogatories it claims are, quote, based on the false premise that the United States can or has been ordered to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador, despite the Supreme Court's clear holding that, quote, the order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. And they won't provide any other information. Now, the government, after saying we have the right to privileges and all this other stuff, and the privileges have not been properly asserted here, they then, because you have to do like a joint letter, you have to include the government's position at the bottom, which you can't edit. I've done joint letters before to federal courts. You know, you'd love to edit it. Like, that's not true, what you're saying in there, but it's their advocacy. And if they want to lie to the judge, subject to ethics violations, they can, pursuant to their bar license. Here's how they respond. As an initial matter, the defendants have, in all respects, and in light of the expedited nature of this discovery, put forward a good faith effort to provide appropriate responses to the interrogatories and requests for production. And it goes downhill from there. That indicates to me they don't have any intention, as the media has been reporting, in properly responding to any of this, and they continue to flout the orders of the court and try to obstruct justice. That's what they are doing. When you have your Department of Justice obstructing justice, you're in a bad place. I'm a federal litigator for 30.
This is wild. And you know, when you're the president, they let you do it. Oh, this is great. I mean, imagine. And the only thing I can say is, you know, just imagine if you were on the shit end of the stick, and a government is basically the reason is basically playing with your freedom with this chicanery. Just imagine. Just imagine for a second. Wouldn't you want somebody, wouldn't you want, first of all, the government to do right by you? And my question here is, why isn't all of America wanting the government to do right by these people? If not because you agree with the people, but because the law says that the government is supposed to. I think that is the most upsetting part about all of this. And be not dismayed, Republicans have already stopped going, most of them have stopped going to their town halls for this very reason. Because they're being asked about this very thing. And don't worry, impeachment calls are coming. And it's not all coming from Democrats. It's coming from Republicans, Republican constituents, independent constituents. Contempt charges are coming. Check it out.
5 years. I rarely have ever seen this language used in a scathing new order against the Trump administration, like the language used by Judge Zinnes, who's presiding over the Abrego Garcia case. Not just Judge Zinnes, who's been upheld twice by the Fourth Circuit and once by the United States Supreme Court, all in unanimous decisions. Here's what she has written, and then I'll give you the order about the discovery games that the Trump administration is playing about Abrego Garcia, and it ends now. To quote Judge Zinnes, she said, and I'm cherry picking from her order, that the government's actions represent a willful disregard of their discovery obligations, bad faith disregard of their discovery allegations based on specious arguments raised not in good faith and in an attempt to be evasive of their fundamental discovery obligations. And she says the stonewalling ends now, giving them until today to fix their responses to the questions and requests for documents that have been made properly by the plaintiffs. What's going on here? I'm going to tell you right now on the Midas Touch Network and Legal AF. The backdrop here is that the plaintiffs' counsel for Abrego Garcia have made a motion for contempt against the Trump administration. The judge pumped the brakes and said,
how did that work last time? Well, didn't go so well last time, but here's the thing. When you have the difference between this time and last time is the sole fact that he didn't go against the Supreme Court. It was solely just Democrats that were pushing something that was solely like hammering things home for the most part. If you've noticed, Democrats have largely been silent. Largely. They've just sat back, did a few things here and there, pushed a few buttons here and there, let a few people say a couple things, but for the most part, just step back. People are not happy about the blatant disregard for the Supreme Court. The Republican conservative movement, for the most part, is tearing itself from within. And it's even going all the way down to the constituent level. Don't be shocked if you don't see a fissure within the constituent level, all the way up to the congressional level. I mean, fuck, they can't even pass a blueprint very easy for the budget without it going back and forth, like 3 times. They can't even agree on proposals relative to truncating the powers of judicial of the judiciary. So it's coming. Don't be surprised. And one thing's for sure, and 2 things for certain: the Supreme Court does not. I'm telling you, the Supreme Court does not like their power being challenged or fucked with. And when you have, who is it? Is it was it Alito? Was it? Where'd it go? Yeah, Roberts and Gorsuch join liberals, justices, and rulings. Multiple unanimous rulings. I mean, one unanimous ruling, but then multiple bipartisan rulings. Something's afoot. And that bitch got gangrene on it.
Let's develop some facts and develop a record here properly under the civil rules of procedure, and let's see their answers. Let's do some depositions, then come back to me about your motion for contempt. But of course, the Trump administration doesn't want to play nicely in the sandbox. They just want to crap in the sandbox, and they don't want to provide any information. Now, let me read to you from the order. I mean, the hearing that she held late yesterday for the reporters in the room was scathing. And she has this constant battle, and it's a losing one, with Drew Ensign, who's the sock puppet for the Department of Justice that keeps getting trotted out there in all of these cases, these ridiculous cases on behalf of the administration. And he takes very, very strange positions because his client, the Department of Justice, and Donald Trump make him do it. Well, we don't interpret the Supreme Court's ruling the way you do, Judge. I mean, I don't know how you read 2 lines of a Supreme Court ruling any differently. And she's had it with them and doesn't believe them. And just as the Supreme Court is deeply skeptical, so is Judge Zennis and really all federal judges that are handling cases, because the Trump administration is taking such outrageous, beyond the pale positions in the courtroom. It's easy for the judges to look them and say, no, there's no argument here. I want to also cover, before I end this hot take, I want to touch on something I'll expand on. There has been a tremendous reversal in a position by Donald Trump and his administration that has not been covered before. We're going to talk about it here as well. Let's get to the order. This is the ruling that came out of yesterday's hearing. Starts with their objection. They started many of their responses, the government, to the discovery responses, discovery being the process prior to trial or hearing in which the parties exchange information through depositions, question and answers under oath, written questions under oath, which are called interrogatories, or requests for production of documents, which is what it sounds like. So the way the Trump administration started off all of their objections with this false premise. It's the false premise about what the Supreme Court ruling actually says, and therefore we can't answer the discovery. Here's how the judge handled that on page 1. Defendants object to certain discovery because they claim the requests are based on, quote, the false premise that the United States can or has been ordered to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. Defendants and their counsel well know that the falsehood lies not in any supposed premise, but in their continued mischaracterization of the Supreme Court's order. See what the judge did there? She said there's only one falsehood here, and the falsehood is what the position of the Trump administration. That order made clear that this court properly required the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that the case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador, or what she says, lawlessly, illegally sent to El Salvador. She then goes on, she says, defendant's objection reflects a willful and bad faith refusal to comply with discovery obligations. And all of their objections on that ground are overruled. Then they try to assert privilege. Oh, we can't answer that question, Judge. State secret privilege, executive privilege, attorney-client privilege. But in order to do that properly in federal court, and these lawyers know better, you have to set out the facts that support the privilege, and you have to create what's called a privilege log, which is a listing of all the documents by description and sufficient enough so that you can debate it without having the other side see the document. You have to prepare a privilege log. They didn't prepare a privilege log. They didn't even provide any facts to support any of their privileges. And here's what she said about that on page 2. Equally specious, defendants' objections on the grounds of privilege are rejected. They provide no supporting information or analysis. As defendants and their counsel know, the proponent of a privilege must demonstrate the legal and factual basis to invoke the protections that such privilege affords. Of course, they don't do that. Instead, on page 3, she said, defendants and counsel. See, she's putting counsel, the lawyers, on notice that she can also separately discipline them. Defendants and counsel stubbornly refuse to provide any basis for the privilege. She says it is a willful refusal to comply with the court's discovery orders, and she finds that an offer to now, late in the game, prepare or consult about a privilege log is too little, too late. And so she's has ruled. Here's what she says on that. Defendants have known, at least since last week, that this court requires specific legal and factual showings to support any claim of privilege. Yet they have continued to rely on boilerplate assertions. That ends now, 6 p.m. Eastern time today. They are to turn over all the documents. No more privilege assertion. She's effectively gotten rid of those. But she's going to give them one more chance to supplement and provide the required facts and privilege log by 6 o'clock today. Or that's it. She struck all of that. On page 4, she says defendant's objection about the timeline for the documents is rejected. Defendant, she says, arbitrarily cramped reading of the court's order is rejected. At a minimum, the discovery period contemplates the time immediately preceding Abrego Garcia's lawless seizure on March 12, 2025, and his transport and confinement to SCOTUS. She then takes on their objections about information about Abrego Garcia's removal to El Salvador, his initial placement in SCOTUS, that's the prison, or his continued confinement there. The objections are overruled. Information regarding Abrego Garcia's removal, as well as placement and confinement, cut to the heart of the inquiry. She wants to know what steps, if any, defendants have taken or will take to facilitate his release from custody. Then she doesn't believe them about that there's only 2 people that are involved with the removal to El Salvador of Abrego Garcia and his initial placement in SCOTUS, listing Robert Cerna and Evan Katz. She said, given the context of this case.
Oh, so somebody gave names. That familiar throwing people under the bus. Okay, that this Orangeman loves to do.
Defendants have failed to respond in good faith, and the refusal to do so can only be viewed as willful and intentional
Those two names are sacrificial lambs because they know that that contempt filings are coming, and so she wants all the names.
compliance. Now, let me take a break here for a minute. When a judge uses this language, bad faith, willful, violation of the law, not in good faith, evasive of fundamental discovery obligations, she is winding up, and the pitch is going to be contempt and findings of bad faith and sanctions, not just against the Trump administration. Look out, Mr. Ensign, for the Department of Justice, because you're right in the line of fire here for the judge. Now, she's given them to supplement, fix, or provide a document 6 o'clock today. I'd bet dollars to donuts they don't do it right.
Now, does it start to make any sense to you why Trump would actually come out and say, I didn't sign the document. There's my lawyers. Talk to my lawyers. Marco Rubio, little Marco. He did great. They all did a fantastic job. They all did amazing. They have good people. Does it start to make sense now? Because the kitchen is getting real hot. You got Boasberg coming after the ass with the contempt. And bear in mind, his contempt charges or claims per se, by the way, let's see. You may think that they're stayed, but they're not. Right here. The circuit court comes in and says, ordered on the circuit's own motion that the district court's contempt-related order entered on April 16th be administratively stayed pending further order of the court. The purpose of this administrative stay is to give the court sufficient opportunity to consider the emergency motion for the stay pending appeal or a writ of mandamus, and should not be construed in any way as a ruling on the merits of that motion. So don't get it confused, oh Donnie boy. We're not saying that he doesn't have the ability to put your ass on notice. We're just giving you a chance. We're giving you extra time because Boasberg only gave that ass a week. You took a case from because you didn't do what he first of all, you didn't do what he asked. And then you rushed your ass, your little orange ass, all the way up to the Supreme Court. And they gave you an attaboy, but then they also told you something that was true, which was the very thing that he was telling you anyway. Took his cases and back down to Texas, which Texas rushed it right on up to the Supreme Court again, to which it ended up being stayed or ordered anyway. And you ended up being told what? Hold, Mr. President. Sit your ass down. You done too much. Recognize those of you who voted for Trump that a president has never at 1 o'clock at 0100 ever been told this before. I'm just saying. And y'all can't say that it's a Democrat thing. No, y'all's precious conservative court that y'all started out in Obama's years stabbing and building. Told your president to sit the fuck down, and rightfully so. So the question here that I have to ask while you have an embattled judiciary doing the job that it's supposed to do, do y'all understand why? And what are y'all going to do the next time the ballot box comes? And in the event that the castrated legislature decides to amend the 22nd Amendment to give this ignoramus a third term, y'all gonna continue drinking curdled orange milk? Because
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what America wants. Nice and calm.
just saying. Think about it. We're going to continue with ideology or ideation, or we're going to learn some objectivity. I mean, there are other Republicans you could choose. There are other ones. At any rate, this has been part 4. Judiciary's fight for, or at least to try to prevent, a constitutional crisis. And so far, they got ahead of yet another flight of deported individuals who might actually be TDA members or might be innocent individuals. But the point is that everyone is due process. But it seems as though Trump seems to think that, where'd it go? Apparently, we can't afford can't find it, but we can afford to give everybody. We can't afford to give everybody due process. But we can go into $43 trillion in debt. And the latest draft, or the map, or the, what is it called? The concept of a bill for the next budget for the next 10 fiscal years. $43 trillion. That's the Republicans' concept of fiscal responsibility. Y'all should look up the Senate bill. I'm sorry, the House Con Resolution. I think it's House Con Resolution 14. Look it up. $43 trillion. Yeah. Fiscal conservatism at your finest. But we can't afford what is written into our Constitution, which is due process. And the only thing that I ask for everybody is to consider if it was your rights being violated, your constitutional rights, your God-given rights, unalienable rights being impinged and infringed upon. What would you want your government to do? So, with that in mind, I salute everyone who had a chance and the wherewithal and the will and the gracious use of your time to stop by and listen to me banter about the law, banter about our Constitution, and banter about the Orangeman in Chief, okay, the Tanner in Chief, the Bronzer in Chief, okay? All right, appreciate everybody for coming through. Thank you, guys. Shout out to everybody, the new faces that came through. Hey, I am at, on my side, 47 freaking subscribers. I got a new one tonight, or new one tonight. So I appreciate the new subscriber. Thank you guys so much for the support. And hey, we're not gonna get it. We're not gonna get them all. Okay, we're just not. Okay, it is what it is. All right. Some people cannot be reached. Most people, cannot be taught. All right. Only thing I can do is put the information. All I can do is, put the information, put the whole thing in their mouth. All right. That's the only thing I can do. All right. Is put the information in the face. Okay. And hopefully they take in the information. All right. But people, stay informed. All right. Learn, read. Okay. Be objective. All right. And whatever you come up with, man, hey, stay on that shit. All right. Salute to everybody. Good night.